Okay, I want you to imagine a courtroom, but this isn't any ordinary courtroom. The stage is the entire cosmos. The defendant is Iblis, but he's not just defending himself, he's actually prosecuting the whole divine plan. Today, we are stepping right into that profound theological debate, digging deep into the cosmic showdown between Iblis and God, just as it's detailed in the Quran.
So, where are we getting all of this from? Well, our guide for this deep dive is the incredibly detailed exegesis, or Tafsir, of Surah Al-A'raf by the scholar Ayatollah Javadi Amoli. We're not just reading a story here, we're treating it like a structured philosophical argument, and this text is our core document for a really complete and exhaustive analysis.
And here it is, the moment that starts it all. This single line from the Quran sets the stage for everything that's about to unfold. You've got a divine command, you have universal obedience, and then one singular, momentous refusal. And you have to understand, this act by Iblis isn't just disobedience. It's the opening argument in a debate about existence itself, about free will, and about divine justice.
So, to make our way through this cosmic trial, we've got a clear roadmap. We're going to start with the confrontation itself, then we'll meticulously unpack the 6 foundational challenges that Iblis throws down. After that, we'll get into the philosophical defense, looking at the purpose of creation, the whole paradox of sin and free will, the real nature of divine justice, and finally, the ultimate wisdom behind the entire system. All right, first things first. We have to establish the facts of the case. And this isn't just some preamble. The events that happen here lay the legal and philosophical groundwork for all the arguments that are about to come.
The core event, on the surface, seems pretty straightforward. God creates Adam from clay. Then he commands the angels and Iblis, who was right there with them, to prostrate before him. It was a sign of respect for this brand new creation. Everyone does it. But Iblis alone refuses. This is the very first no in the history of creation, a defiant act that demands a reason and kicks off a dialogue that has echoed through theology for centuries.
Now, the source text we're using is really methodical. It splits its analysis into 2 main discussions. The first one deals with the immediate conversation and questions about where Iblis even came from. But it's the second discussion that's the real heart of the matter, and that's where we're going to focus. It's a systematic breakdown of 6 profound objections, or ishkalat in Persian, that Iblis raises. He's essentially putting the entire divine plan on trial.
And that brings us to the core of Iblis's case against God. We're going to examine one by one the 6 foundational questions he puts forward. It's so important to see these not as just some angry outbursts, but as structured, logical challenges. They form the basis of a philosophical inquiry that people have been wrestling with ever since.
So, the first challenge is a direct shot at divine foreknowledge. Iblis is basically asking, look, if you, in your eternal, all-knowing wisdom, already knew that my destiny was to disobey and be damned, then what was the point of creating me at all? This question cuts right to the heart of predestination. Is it really just to create a being who you know is destined to suffer?
The second question builds directly on the first, but this time it targets the logic of the command itself. Iblis argues, and another thing, knowing with absolute certainty that I was going to refuse, why even give the command to prostrate in the first place? Wasn't this just an exercise in futility? An order that was designed to fail from the moment you gave it? It's a serious challenge to the wisdom behind a divine decree that seems to lead to a known negative outcome. And now we get to the big one, the central problem of free will versus determinism. Iblis's third objection is a really powerful one. If absolutely nothing in existence happens without your will, and you are the ultimate first cause of everything, including my own thoughts and my actions, then how can you possibly hold me responsible? Why am I being punished for an act that, if you trace the chain of causality all the way back, has to start with you?
With the fourth question, Iblis zooms out a bit. He goes from his own personal fate to his role in the entire universe, and it's the classic problem of evil. He asks, why bring a being like me, Satan, into existence at all? If my whole job is to be the source of temptation and evil for humanity, why would a perfectly good creator deliberately introduce this powerful element of corruption into his own creation? The fifth objection is all about Iblis's own perception of logic and the natural order of things. He basically argues, the command itself didn't make sense. You made me from smokeless fire, and you made Adam from plain old clay. By any rational measure, fire is a nobler, more powerful element than dirt. So why would you command a superior being to bow down to an inferior one? It just defies reason.
Now, this is the argument from arrogance, for sure, but he's cleverly framing it as a rational critique of the divine command's logic.
Okay, before we get to the final question, we have to look really closely at this key phrase from the Qur'an. Iblis says, "Fabima aghwaytani." It's often translated as, "because you have misled me," or "because you have caused me to go astray." This is a very specific, very loaded phrase, and it's the entire foundation for his final and most direct accusation.
And that brings us to the sixth and final challenge. Using that concept of igwa, of being led astray, Iblis turns it right back on God. He's not just saying, "You let me go astray," he is asking, "Why did you actively mislead me?" This is the ultimate passing of the buck, accusing the divine source of being the direct primary cause of his own downfall.
So Iblis's case is now on the table. The indictment is complete. Now the theological defense begins. And to really get the answers that the Tafsir provides, we first need a really crucial philosophical key: the difference between the purpose of the one doing the acting and the purpose that's built into the act itself.
First up, we have what's called the purpose of the agent, or ghayat al-fa'il. This is about a goal that benefits the actor. You know, we humans do things because we need or want something. We eat because we're hungry, we work to make money, we look for friends so we're not lonely. Our actions are meant to fill some kind of lack in ourselves. But God, by definition, is perfect, complete, self-sufficient. He doesn't lack anything. So God can't have a purpose of the agent, because he just doesn't act to fulfill any personal need.
So if God isn't acting for himself, what's the purpose? Well, that brings us to the purpose of the act, or ghayat al-fi'al. This is the benefit that's inherent within the action itself, a benefit that flows to the one receiving the act, not the one doing it. And in this way of thinking, all of God's actions, including the very act of creation, have a purpose that is all about the perfection and the benefit of creation itself.
Let's just put these two critical ideas side by side to make it super clear. The purpose of the agent comes from a lack and benefits the actor, so it just can't apply to a perfect God. But the purpose of the act comes from perfection and grace, and it flows outward to creation. This single distinction is the entire philosophical foundation for understanding why God creates anything at all.
And this all leads to a pretty profound conclusion. Creation isn't some project God started to fix a problem or satisfy some desire. It's an act of pure grace, or fade. You can think of it like the natural overflow of a being with infinite perfection and generosity. Kind of like how the sun shines and gives off heat, not because it needs to, but because that's just what it is. This completely reframes the answer to Iblis's first question, why create me? The answer is, as an act of grace for the benefit of the whole created system.
Okay, with that philosophical groundwork in place, we can finally start tackling Iblis's objections about predestination, sin, and responsibility head-on. This is where we untangle that incredibly complex relationship between divine knowledge and our own free will.
Here's the core of the response to Iblis's second and third questions. The Tafsir makes a critical distinction. Knowing something is not the same as causing something. Just because God, who exists outside of time, knows what choice you're going to make doesn't mean he forces you to make that choice. Think about it like this. A master doctor sees a patient with a terrible lifestyle and knows with almost total certainty that this person is going to have a heart attack. The doctor's knowledge doesn't cause the heart attack, the patient's choices do. Iblis's big mistake is confusing God's all-knowing nature with compulsion, and that's the mistake that lets him try to dodge responsibility for his own free choice.
But what about that most damning accusation, that God himself misled Iblis? To answer this, the Tafsir points us to other verses in the Quran, like this one. It says that God misleads only the fasiqeen, the defiantly disobedient, the ones who have already, of their own free will, chosen a path of rebellion. This suggests that divine misleading isn't some random primary action, but it's a consequence that follows a person's own choice.
And this gives us a much deeper, more nuanced understanding of that critical word, ahwa. According to this exegesis, it doesn't mean that God actively pushes someone into making a mistake. What it means is the removal of divine guidance and grace as a result of an individual's own stubborn choice to disobey. It's a consequence, not a cause. When Iblis chose arrogance, the natural result was that the divine support that would have kept him on the right path was withdrawn. He wasn't pushed off the path. The path was removed from under him because he chose to step away first. This naturally leads us to the question of divine justice. I mean, if Iblis's fate is a consequence of his own choices, then what exactly is the nature of his punishment? To get this, the source argues that we first have to realize that not all hardship is the same thing. This is such a key insight. Iblis frames his fate like he's been given an unfair sentence from a judge. But the Tafsir really broadens our understanding here by explaining that divine consequences are complex, they're multifaceted, and we just can't lump them all under the single category of punishment.
So the source text breaks down divine consequences into these different categories. First, you've got punitive punishment. That's a direct payment for a crime, and its purpose is justice. Second, there are trials or tests, which are difficulties designed to help you grow spiritually. And finally, there is simple natural consequence, the direct, built-in result of an action, like the fact that fire burns. The burning isn't a punishment for being fire, it's just the nature of fire.
So, if we apply this framework, Iblis's fate is best understood not as some arbitrary sentence, but as a natural consequence. His arrogance, his disobedience, these were actions that, by their very nature, create distance from the source of all grace and mercy. His punishment is this separation itself. He wasn't cast into a fire. He chose to become the fire of arrogance, and the burning is just an inherent property of that choice. It's a self-inflicted state of being.
We now get to the final and broadest part of the whole argument, which addresses Iblis's fourth and fifth questions. Why create me, the source of evil, in the first place, and why give me an illogical command? Answering these requires us to look at the entire system of creation and really understand its ultimate purpose.
The Quran itself actually gives us the context for this whole drama. Before Adam was even created, God announced his plan to place a Khalifa, a vicegerent, a steward on earth. This sets the whole stage. The entire purpose of this world is to be a place where beings can, through their own choices, rise up to this incredibly high station. But how do you actually achieve something like that?
The answer, according to the Tafsir, lies in the necessity of struggle. True perfection, genuine virtue, these aren't things you just get handed to you. They are actively earned. And they can only be earned in a place where there is a real choice, a real struggle between opposing forces. The existence of Iblis, of temptation, of opposition, of the very real possibility of failure, is what gives the choice for good its meaning, its weight, and its value. A world without challenge would just produce robots, not the dynamic, tested, and freely chosen perfection that is the whole goal of creation.
And this ties all the different threads of the argument together, bringing us right back to that foundational principle we started with. The entire complex system, including the parts that seem negative or even evil, is not for God's benefit. It's a meticulously designed arena, a cosmic gym, if you will, created for the sole purpose of allowing beings like us to achieve our highest potential through the meaningful exercise of free will.
You know, when you look at it this way, the whole drama of creation, temptation, and redemption unfolds on this unbelievably vast cosmic stage. Every challenge, every whisper of temptation, and every moral choice you make becomes a critical part of a much larger process, the forging of a perfected being, a true Khalifa who is worthy of representing the divine on earth.
And so we end on this thought. If this entire theological framework holds up, if the whole system really is designed for our voluntary perfection through struggle, it forces us to reconsider our most basic definitions. Is what we call evil a flaw in the system, or is it a necessary, integrated tool, the whetstone against which the blade of human virtue is sharpened? It's a profound question, and it sits right at the very heart of this cosmic debate.